We're all here tonight. We have Steve Forbes, Forbes Media Chairman and Editor-in-Chief. He will take no responsibility for Art Laffer, former Reagan economist, or Steve Moore, host of More Money on WABC Radio. And those two managed to co-author a book called The Trump Economic Miracle without any help from me, which I still think was a big, big mistake. All right. All right. I want to start with the difficulties in this budget resolution. Steve Moore, you are constantly attacking the senators, but actually, and I'm glad the House got its budget res. I'm glad they drew first blood. But as I said in the riff, the House thing has a lot of major league problems. They're falling into a tax trap. They're not making the tax cuts permanent. Those are two big items here. Something's got to be done about that.
I agree with that, but I also believe, as you just said, that there's an urgency about this of getting the tax cut done, signed, sealed, and delivered. I see no reason why it cannot be done by Memorial Day. And one of the mistakes that Reagan made was they weren't able to get that tax cut done until the end of his first year in the White House, and then it was delayed, as Arthur Laffer has taught me. So I don't want to repeat that mistake. I was at a conference this weekend, Larry, with a bunch of the Republican operatives from the House and Senate. And it was apropos to what you were just saying about this kind of Ford-Nixon mentality. Right. They kept talking about how we got to cut the deficit.
Right.
And I was thinking, you know, they spent hours on this, and I never heard the word growth.
Right.
Grow the economy. Right. That's the solution.
And by the way, Arthur, they're going to have a big growth component. If they think they're going to, it's interesting to me. The only way to break through, and I've talked to Senator Mike Crapo about this. Crapo is a brilliant guy, and he's completely transparent. I mean, he's just an ordinary guy. You dial him up his cell phone, he says, hello, this is Mike. I mean, it's really fascinating, and he always gets right back to you. But the point is, if you're going to put both the Trump 1.0 tax cuts, the 2017 tax cuts, plus the new ones, which are huge. I mean, the 15% corporate tax, 100% depreciation on factories, for example, and the tips and the overtime and the Social Security. If you're going to put them both together, you got to have a Laffer curve impact here on revenues. You're going to have to show that. I'm not seeing that. For example, the House resolution has a 2.6% growth rate. CBO and the Federal Reserve have the old 1.8% growth rate. So growth and what I'm calling the Laffer curve has got to play a role in this, and at the moment it has not yet.
Well, it will play a role. I mean, if you get those taxes through, you'll get a lot more growth.
But to put it on paper in the budget resolution is what I'm saying. And eventually, the reconciliation package, which has to pass a parliamentarian.
Yeah, well, I would love to see that as well, the growth estimates in the package. But we can always put in something else. These are just silly rules that they go by, Larry, to get fill the hole for the 10-year period. We could do something like reduce or eliminate some of the deductions on 501c3s. Right. Now, he's already done a little bit there. If you got rid of the deductions on contributions, which is about, I don't know, 200 billion. And then you got the ones on the earnings from 501c3s. These are all over 50 million. You get another 200 million.
How about elite colleges that won't shape up?
But these are the ones. These are the ones. Right. If you did that, you get $4 trillion. 4 trillion over a 10-year period.
How much?
Well over $4 trillion.
But what tax rate? What tax rate?
Well, I'm assuming just the deductions at the ordinary 37%. That's a little over 200 million. There every year, 200 billion, excuse me, every year 250 billion. And then you've got the earnings on those returns in the pension, in the funds, in the 501c3s. Now, that's another 260 billion or so there. So you add those together, you're getting some serious money. It's what Everett Dirksen said about it, you know, but that would give us we've got to learn to play by the rules that they have in there, not by good economics.
Everett Dirksen, by the way, voted against the Kennedy tax cut, so I'm going to
Did he really? Oh, yeah, but he did say $1 billion here, $1 billion there.
If you'd read my book, you'd understand that. Now, Steve Forbes, you wrote a brilliant piece about $3,000 gold and the inflation threat that entails. Talk about it to us, please.
Well, the best barometer of future inflation, monetary inflation, is the gold price. Has been for 4,000 years of recorded history. And since 2023, gold has gone from about $1,800 an ounce to almost over $3,000 an ounce. That means we're going to get monetary inflation in the next few years unless the Federal Reserve wakes up and realizes that the whole purpose of the way you fight inflation is stabilizing the value of the currency. and not trying to depress the economy, which is their mentality today. And that's why they should look at the price of gold. Greenspan for a while did it, and then he lost sight of it. But that's the way they have to go. And if they don't, I think President Trump's going to be ambushed. Why is this inflation coming? They're going to blame it on all these pro-growth policies.
Right.
And that's the key thing. The Democrats are going to use it to bash down free enterprise economics.
Yes, I know, 100% is right. By the way, you're right. Greenspan's, at least his first 3 terms as Fed chairman, he was basically using a gold price rule.
Right.
Some such thing. All right, we're going to break up here and listen to President Trump today in the cabinet room. Take a listen, please.
Tariffs, and I think I've been very fair. I have them set, but I think I've been very fair to countries that have really abused us economically for many, many decades. Eggs are way down. Groceries are down very substantially, but down. Almost everything's down. Now, I'd like to see interest rates come down a little bit, and you're going to see billions of dollars, even trillions of dollars coming into our country very soon in the form of tariffs. When you look at the number of companies that have said, like, we're close to, I would say close to $4 trillion. We never had numbers like that. And we're going to protect them once a year. We'll protect them through taxes, through incentives, and also through tariffs.
You know, it's funny. As an experienced Trump fan myself, I don't mind that he doesn't get every factoid right. I just like his spirit. He is the quintessential optimist, Steve Forbes. I mean, you know what? You need to hear that kind of, we can do this, we can do that, we're going to do it this way, it's going to turn out okay. I just think the country loves that. And the other guy who preceded him, whose name I will not mention, was like the quintessential pessimist. You know, people love an optimist.
So it's so funny you should mention that, because people always ask me, I'm sure they do, you and all 3 of us, you know, how are Reagan and Trump alike?
Yes.
And that is exactly, you know, remember David Stockman said, the world's coming to an end, these deficits, and Trump would say, it's a beautiful day for America.
Yes, that's right. No, that's exactly
So I
right.
think you're right. Americans love that optimism. Look, I've learned not to second guess Trump, because a lot of times he proves me wrong. Now, Steve Forbes and we're not the biggest fans of tariffs, but he always seems to come out a winner. And so I'm reserving judgment. The one thing I would say, there is one thing that is up in price, and that's steel. Prices are up a lot. So,
well, Mr. Trump's using an egg price rule.
Yeah.
And by the way,
That's not a yoke either.
Terrible. But also, he'd like to see interest rates come down a bit. This is a kinder, gentler Trump. He's not bashing the Fed. He's just kind of like to see him come down a little bit. All right. Now, I'm going to argue, and as from this, and also from what he said yesterday, Art Laffer, he is softening his position on tariffs. Now, it's the reciprocal tariff policy. He got out of the chute a little too fast, a little too hard, shook up the stock market. I think now he's more attuned to it. Stock market, by the way, recently likes what it hears better, what it's hearing better than it did before. Just reading some of the stuff from what he said yesterday. He might soften his reciprocal tariff. Here, I may give a lot of countries breaks, okay? He said reciprocal tariffs could stop short of his pledge to equalize U.S. duties in all cases, all right? Quote, I'm embarrassed to charge them what they've charged us. By the way, a place like India, which has exorbitant tariffs, is bringing them down. They're in negotiation right now. So reciprocity is working. And he also said, April 2nd, of course, is the liberation day for reciprocity, but he said that other tariffs on goods like autos, lumber, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductor chips might not be implemented until later, which means he's going to negotiate this through. So I think he has his ear to the ground on this, and I think he is softening it, but I still think it's a good policy.
Yeah, he's perfectly aware of what trade is, what trade does, all the problems with Smoot-Hawley tariff, the tariffs of 1890. Believe me, he's fully knowledgeable in all of that. What he has is flexibility, which they did not have historically. And he can threaten tariffs, put them on for a week, and then take them off with executive orders, which gives him a great deal of flexibility to negotiate reciprocity and to look at it and get deals coming to the table. And so far, he's been really successful. Look at Panama, look at Mexico, look at what's happening with India right now, as you mentioned. I have full faith and trust in what Trump does. He knows the dangers of tariff, believe me, and he knows better than to have a collapse of the whole economy, but he knows how to negotiate really, really well.
Oh, that's right.
And I do have faith in him on that completely.
You know, Steve, I think he's not getting enough credit. Maybe he's not taking enough credit. One country that is really working with him on this is Mexico. The president of Mexico, Sheinbaum, who started out, I mean, she had big lefties, no question about that. She started out, Trump bashing and hostile right after the election. They are working together on the border, on military, on the cartels. And, by the way, Mexico is slapping tariffs on China because they don't like the cheap imports either. I think that he should get a lot of credit on that. On the other hand, he should watch it on Canada because he may elect another left-winger. This guy, Mark Carney, is a never-Trumper. He's an American hater. I know him, okay? He was a central banker in England and Canada, whoopee.
And don't look at the records he had there.
No, that's correct. That's correct. And there is a pretty good conservative, Poilievre is his name.
Yes.
And somehow the Canada-bashing 51st state is giving Carney the advantage, not Poilievre.
Then that's going to be a real tragedy, unnecessary tragedy. I just wish you'd stop the talk about the 51st state.
Yeah.
Because if they ever got in negotiations, which they won't, each province is going to come in as a state.
I know you have,
each territory is going to come in.
You'll have all these new lefty senators. There might be a couple of conservative senators, but all lefty senators.
But they're all left of center.
Yeah,
and they'll vote with
right.
the Democrats to impeach him.
That's right.
But I do like the idea of Greenland becoming our 50th state. I mean, can you imagine how much resources?
But what about Mexico? Mexico's coming around. Trump deserves credit for that. His reciprocity thing. I'm just saying.
Mexico is doing it right, where they're basically sitting down and negotiating. The worst thing you can do is try to retaliate, because that's not going to work with Trump.
Right.
Plus, we have the economic power, and Trump understands that. So this tit for tat is not going to work.
Yeah, because their first conversation, she took it seriously. She had her facts ready. She had a real serious conversation rather than name-calling or threatening.
Right.
And also, she must be scared out of her wits with the rise of the narco state.
That's right.
They are well-armed. They have drones.
Yep.
They have sophisticated weaponry. They're not going to be easy to take out, and they're gradually taking over the country. So she needs every bit of help she can, and this provides the cover to really go after the cartels in a way in which you don't rip Mexico apart.
And Steve, besides Mexico, I want to come back. I mentioned India. There's a good story, and Reuters is running a good story today. India is bringing its tariffs down across the board, negotiating with our folks, and also the European Union is bringing its automobile tariff down from 12.5% down to 2.5%, which is what we have. My point is, even though you won't give them any credit, reciprocity is actually working already before it's even been put into place.
I'm okay with reciprocity. The other thing is, what Milton Friedman would say if he were here at this table is, this is to their benefit to bring their tariffs down.
Yes.
Right? Europe benefits from lower tariffs, right? Mexico would. So everybody comes off a winner if Trump wins and lowers those tariffs for everyone.
But not if you cannot look. Unfair trading practices we have been taken advantage of. I don't know that Milton, maybe whatever he would say about this, dear Milton, who was a friend and mentor to all of us. But the fact remains, we have been taken advantage of.
Yeah, we have.
And I think Trump's fighting back. I think Americans want him to fight back.
Yeah. How about just switching California with Canada? Wouldn't that be a good free trade deal?
Weather better in California.
You can get a couple of other states too.
Liberal for liberal.
Well,
I like Alberta.
Trade.
I like that. That's the oil part.
Oh, yeah,
Canada.
that's great.
I think that's terrific.
Just take the city of Seattle and swap it for Alberta.
Okay, I'll have to process that. Art Laffer, how is the economy right now? How is the
Well, the
American
economy, I think, is fine. I've looked through all the major kingdoms. If you look at tax policy, it's not going up. Taxes aren't. We're going to get it. Steve's right. We're going to get that bill. You look at spending, you got Doge. You've never seen anything like this in your life.
Yep.
It's way better than the Grace Commission or any of these others that were done. You look at monetary policy. I'll take a little bit of issue with Steve Forbes in this. Gold, I think, is really rising in price to get out of the dollar, which the dollar is the tallest midget in the bunch, but currencies, government-run currencies, are not doing well, and I think people are trying to find alternatives.
That's
with
why
Bitcoin,
it's going up.
Well, that and Bitcoin
That's
too.
inflation.
Some
But
of that,
by the way, is if you're right, it's the other side of the same coin.
Yes.
That's inflationary.
And it's a Bitcoin.
Are you worried? How worried are you about inflation?
I'm not terribly worried about inflation right today. I'm really not. But I also look at not only monetary, but I look at regulatory policy. We're decontrolled oil and all this stuff.
Yes.
It's really looking good. And lastly, I do think Trump knows what he's doing on trade. I think he's using leverage. He understands the gains from trade. He understands the leverage he has. And I think he really knows how to play this game well.
The point I want to make about that, Steve Forbes, is people should not obsess about these tariffs, okay? Number one, because Trump knows what he's doing, okay? You have some confidence in the guy. Number two, take a look at the numbers. The taxes are probably worth $5-6 trillion tax cuts, okay? The deregulation is probably worth another $2 trillion. If you looked at the reciprocal tariff penalties, it's a couple of $100 billion. So the tax cuts and deregulation is many, many times larger than anything that's going to happen on trade. Trade itself is not that big a deal to the American economy. It's about 12-13%. So I don't understand why people get so excited, except I do think they want to beat Trump over the head with tariffs and say it's recessionary, it's inflationary, it's going to cause a stock market crash. I don't think any of that's true. I think there's more politics there than economic analysis.
Well, those critics, yes. If Trump said the sun rose in the morning, they'd say no, it's a Chinese lamp or something. And so I think on that. But in terms of the tariffs themselves, you have to also look at what's the impact on the supply chain. We saw with the lockdowns, one little thing goes wrong and the whole thing gets in trouble. So that gets to the point on the tax cuts. They say, oh, we'll have it by the end of May, Memorial Day. Too late if they have that kind of mentality. Then it'll go into the summer, and then they'll say, well, we got to the end of the year. They got to get big and bold now.
Well, they are.
And that Senate parliamentarian, I hope she realizes.
She's the most powerful person in Washington right now.
Actually, though, she's not here to be political. She'll give the two budget committees what they want.
Good.
But I know we're running over a bit, but Steve Moore, I want to come back to you. Today, for example, the Big Six is meeting. So it's Hassett and Besson from the White House. It's the minority leader and the speaker, and the two tax committees, Jason Smith from Ways and Means and Mike Crapo from Senate Finance. They are meeting. Their staffs meet daily. The Big Six meets every 10 days or so. I mean, I don't know what you're hearing, but there is quite a lot of work being done on this.
It is, but they're not actually that far apart. That's the thing. I mean, we know we want to make all of the Trump tax cuts, permanent. You had such a big part of that. We want to, no tax on tips, no tax on some of these other things. I like that idea of 15% tax on made in America products. That would be so. And come on, get your act together, guys. You're not that far apart. Deliver this tax cut.
100% depreciation on factories is incredible.
I didn't even know. I thought that was expensive.
Retroactive to January 20th. And by the way, there is a boom going on. Take a look at the numbers. December, January, and February. Business investment is booming. I think it's an anticipation of tax cuts are a wonderful thing, Laffer.
They sure are. And if you want to play this game, I do suggest, though, you get rid of some of these deductions for 501c3s.
I'm all for it.
And you open up the floor and you don't even have to worry about this. And it's just going to be a great sunny day.
And reduce the capital gains tax cut if you're worried about revenue.
Revenues, yes.
Get incentive and revenue.
I think Steve Forbes is exactly right.
The tax cuts on these elite universities should start and end with Yale. Thank you, Steve Forbes, Art Laffer, and Steve Moore. We will see you for dinner.